Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. The recent election in Senegal, which produced a 44-year-old tax collection worker, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, an anti-establishment fella, as president, has reopened debate on the role of youth in shaping the political future of their country, despite the sit-tight attitude of some African leaders. While the youths in Senegal defied all odds, including state sanctions and politically motivated incarceration, through determination and resilience, their counterparts in Nigeria appeared to have resigned to fate and allowed ruling elites to continue to buy their way into office and occupy available seats of power. Despite efforts to encourage youth's participation in politics and governance, including legislations, the nation's youth demography has continuously been marginalized by the ruling elites, who mostly in their 70s and 80s, through the instrumentality of their access to wealth and influence and leadership recruitment exercise. The end result is self-serving and unpopular policies that have continued to put the larger citizens on the edge, while deepening the gap between the haves and the have-not, with attendant consequences on the progress and stability of the nation. Now, it is against this backdrop we'll be engaging with a public affairs analyst, Comrade Salihu Mahmud, on the task ahead of the Nigerian youths in the quest to take back the country. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
And viewers, before we commence the conversation, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. And once again, thank you, Comrade Salihu, for coming.
Thank you very much for having me here.
All right. I'm sure you must have been inspired, if you like. You must have watched, with amazement what happened in Senegal. The sort of political revolution, some will say, driven by the youths, that drove away, if you like, the old order, talking about the Macky Sall, the former president, and his attempt, to have, someone to succeed him. What do you make up with that period and the efforts of the youth generally in Senegal to inspire or to effect this leadership change?
Well, even though we like to enthrone democracy, but I must emphatically reiterate that this is not the first time. We are also having, youthful leaders in Africa. Don't forget, in '87, Thomas Sankara of blessed memory. Don't also forget, we also had histories of recent, the president of Guinea, even though military, because all I know is that leadership is leadership. But the most interesting part of it is that this one was produced by popular vote, which is democracy. Right. So I think in a way, it is like awakening to many Nigerian and African youths, because this goes beyond the shores of Nigeria. Because when we're talking about leadership, once you see an inspiration or get an inspiration from a way a leadership is formed, then you start preparing for that. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that one day, if we become more patriotic, more selfless, then we become people who promote our legacy. The materialism, the Nigerian system will be able to produce a youth one day. But if we go by the attitude we are having today, it is going to be very difficult, because there is inferiority complex, there is a materialism, then there is lust for wealth, and also of other things that are opposite those of Sanko and Faye. Because when you look at them, they were both enterprising, patriotic, as well as dogged. They never put materialism or other artificial considerations. They put in their best, and the kind of message they sent to their followership, who were the electorate, went. You can see the most astonishing part of it is people were in prison. 10 days to elections, Faye got freedom, and came and stood in for Sanko, and together it stood out to be successful. So I think this should be an eye-opener for especially Nigerian youths. Rather than going to think about Yahoo Plus, Yahoo, and short way of making wealth, we should sit down and know that we have the majority in numerical strength and what have you, that one day if we want to dislodge some of the elderly people, we can do. But do we have the qualities when compared to these younger people in Francophone and other countries in Africa? That is also the question mark.
Right, okay. You started talking about the personalities, Sanko and, FIA, their collabo, both of them are anti-establishment, and it happens to be that, they met, incarceration in prison, following the crackdown on opposition by the immediate past president, Macky Sall. How they work it out while in prison is another story altogether. Perhaps we'll talk about that. But then let's talk about the resilience, the determination of the people of Senegal, the youths in particular, who drove this change. If it were perhaps in Nigeria, you will be hearing about issues around fault lines. Yes, religion, ethnicity, regional, and what have you. But in Senegal, they put together, they came together to see that, okay, this is where we're going to, and this is the kind of change we want. And they stood for it, and they were able to get it. Does that sound, how does that sound to you?
Well, when you look at the foundation of true and a kind of confrontational electoral votes in Senegal, it did not just commence with Sanko and Faye. Don't forget, Macky Sall himself, the immediate past predecessor of Faye, benefited through this resilience of Senegalese people when they were fed up with Abdoulaye Wade. So it was through a kind of comrade alike and a kind of Protestant, votes that they were able to host Abdoulaye Wade. Because when you look at historically in Senegal, from the days of Abdou Diouf to Abdoulaye Wade and others, we started having a kind of confrontational resilience from the time of Macky Sall, because he himself was a social civil society person. He used the same slogan Faye and Sanko used to get to the top today to get there. But unfortunately, he forgot, because Itato, it was a 7-year single term in Senegal. When Macky Sall took over, he now said, no, this was not appropriate, let's reduce it. And a man who did well by reducing that, coming to say he wanted a third time, you can now see that goes to say that in presidency of certain countries, there are certain spirits that accompanies it, because it was 7 years single term.
But some would say out of power, perhaps you look at it that way, but once you grab power and then with all the parasites that come with the power, you begin to think
he should have left it in that 7 year single term. Maybe all this that happened wouldn't have happened, because Itato, it was 7 year single tenure. He now say it was so much and too much. Let's reduce it to 5 years single tenure. And the same person who was Itato, a patriot, becoming like forgive my language, a villain, is uncalled for. So I think what happened in Senegal has to do with patriotism and selflessness. This brings me back to late former Second Republic Governor of Lagos State, Lateef Jakande. He once emphatically said that if a youth are lacking in what do you call it, patriotism and selflessness, unity of purpose cannot be gotten. Major problem we are having in Nigeria is we are not united as youths. The majority of us are not patriotic and selfless. What you see a youth talking about now is celebrating that person who has pilfered with his public accounts. You see a Nigerian youth going to make posters saying this senator is a unique man, is enterprising, is devoted, is skillful.
That, they call them social media.
Let's call a spade a spade. Today in our system, in our polity, even if you are going to contest for councillor, if you have no godfather sponsoring you, or you have nothing to give, nobody will even come to you. Even from the posters, you pasted. They will start insulting you from there. They will say, what has he eaten that is going to contest for councillorship? What has he eaten that is going to be chairman? What has he eaten that is going to become member of State House of Assembly, House of Rep member, senator, governor, what have you? They forgot that leadership is not by material acquisition or by wealth. Leadership has nothing to do with numbers of houses you have, exotic cars you drive, the positions you've held, or your international trips and what have you. It has to do with the ability to be able to go and serve your people by going there to bring infrastructure, education, shelter, good roads, hospitals, youth emancipation, employment, and whatsoever. But in our system, it is the other way around. And who created it? We are also part of the problem. You find patriotic youths who are supposed to go and vie for juicy positions, going to become political touts and political jobbers of certain senators, certain governors, and even the president and ministers, which ought not to be. We must change our perception. We must change our thinking. Then again, this lust for wealth, we must also take away. If not, we might not be able to do what happened in Senegal that produced Faye and Sanko altogether.
Right, okay, looking at the fault lines again, yes, you talked about why it is difficult for Nigerian youths in particular and Nigerians in general, to come to terms with the reality and work towards, driving a process that will bring about credible leadership. Now, what role do you think the institutions have played, in Senegal, for instance? Because it is one thing for the citizens to have a determination. It's another for the institutions to also provide them with the enabling environment to be able to make leadership change seamlessly. For instance, Nigerians have had election just last year. Yes, a number of candidates aspire for that position. In the end, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu emerged in his 70s or 80s, some will say. This is in spite of the number of youths that have also indicated interest, to participate, to vie for this position. Most of them were scared away by the exorbitant even cost of forms, nomination forms alone. There are a number of youths who have some hope, until the nomination form were pegged at 100 million and so on, and they got scared. What role do you think, the institutions are playing in Senegal that is not obtainable here in Nigeria?
Even though Senegal is a smaller country compared to Nigeria, because one state in Nigeria is Senegal. Then again, don't forget we are Anglophone, while they are Francophone. We were colonized by the British, while they were colonized by the French. And during the time of their colonization, there was policy of assimilation, where they were assimilating even the French culture and what have you. Institutions in Senegal played vital roles, especially their electoral umpire.
That's right.
Because that electoral body did what it ought to do when and how, by not even looking at the eye of their incumbent. They did not use power of incumbent, unlike Nigeria, where you see that the electoral empire,
the leadership drives influence all the processes.
That is it. They do whatever the powers that be, even though during the 2015 election that produced Muhammadu Buhari was a little bit different. But outside that, we've not had where from Fedeco days till NECO, till INEC and what have you, we've not had where they say no to power of that be at the presidential villa or so. So the institutions, especially the electoral institution in Ghana, the civil society and others, I think they played key role in Senegal by ensuring that these powers that be today, Faye and Sanko, emerge as president and prime minister respectively. So we are hoping when the Nigerian Independent National Electoral Commission is restructured. And let me take example at state levels. Even though later tribunals were instituted and what have you, look at states like Oyo State that produced Makinde then, SDP. SDP was a minority party. At the state level, the governor emerged from that party. Then look at Labour Party in some southeastern states. Look at Kano NNPP. So if we continue to borrow from positive antecedents of certain smaller countries, because it is shameful to say that Nigeria that has 36 states and the FCT, a largest nation across the world, and what have you, was not able to do what a smaller Senegal did. You know, it's shameful. So I think that
our president is, you know, even though he is the leader of the ECOWAS, was there to witness this leadership change, if you like, and he was overwhelmed, perhaps with the emergence of Faye, a very young chap.
Being overwhelmed differs from practicing. He went there as ECOWAS chairman, he felicitated, he congratulated. Is he ready that by 2027, when we get some younger people as presidential candidates of other parties, that he will suppress his power of incumbency and let the will of God be? Like 2023 elections, only God saved us. We know where we will have been, but you know, God is always having mercy on Nigeria. So President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, as ECOWAS chairman, as president of Nigeria, has been somebody who benefited from democratic awareness, because I can remember he was among the people that fought the Abacha administration. Then also in 1999, that antecedent, positive antecedent, brought him to be governor of Lagos State, and today look at where he is. So I believe he should, you know, have learned certain lessons from Senegal, so that by 2027, whoever will emerge, let it be, even if it is him for a second time, but if it comes out or turned out to be the other way around, you should let the will of God and will of people be. That is how to enthrone our democracy, especially as a country that other superpowers are seen as forced to reckon with and as the giant of Africa.
And do you think that the ruling elites perhaps would just relinquish power to the youths in spite of the wave of change we are seeing in other countries and all of that? Looking at how much energy they are putting in, you know, in terms of resources, finances, and what have you, to grab power at all costs, do you see them just relinquishing power without the youth also rising up to the challenge and then defying those fault lines that have continued to stifle them? Talk about them, you know, ethnicity, religion, and the rest of it, and the quest for wealth and what have you.
You see, the elites will have no choice than to relinquish power, because age, by the way, is not on their side. How old is President Ahmed Bola Tinubu now? How old is Atiku Abubakar, Wazir in Adamawa? How old is Peter Obi? Even Showore, that people are thinking is that younger, how old is he now? I believe he should be in his 50s. So from here to 2027, how old will Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu be? How old will Atiku Abubakar be? Let us assume by 2027 it is not yet done. But by 2031, will that same scenario play out? That is the question we need to ask. Whether we like it or not, as youths, we must change our attitude, because I must assure you that it is not in totality that we are wanting in those kind of lukewarm attitude and attitude that are not expected in our polity. There are still few youths that are good. When we look at the definition of who is a youth,
in the first place,
let me take that of Jalo. One time APC stalwart from Gombe State, you remember, a youth leader of APC. He was 50 years old, and somebody asked him that question. You are youth leader of APC, how old are you? He said, I'm 50. So in Nigeria, it is assumed that when you are still 50 years old, 40, you are still a youth. But in global definition, I think it's 30 to 37 or so, or what have you. So, but I believe with what happened in Senegal, Nigerian youths will start changing some of their attitudes. Out of 100%, at least, we will not lack 40% to be good, that are qualified or that have the wherewithal to be president or to be Senate president in future and hold other positions. You can see we have people who are in their youthful age and are governors today. So I believe before then they will be able to. The elites, it is not a matter of saying, you can see, even though it is not good to be discussed, 2020 and SARS, you saw what almost happened. So that is to tell you that the formidable force
even
in the system are the youths. So I am optimistic that if people like you and me and other few patriotic and committed ones like us goes enlightening educating them, they will be able to change, because in our own limited time and opportunity we have, we've been enlightening some of them. I believe one day youths will take mantle of leadership at the presidential villa and become president and commander-in-chief and do what is right, when and how, by way and manner it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, before we assess the ones that are even currently in power, because we have a number of them, just like we used to have them before. They've tested power, they've tested positions, and we've seen what they've done. At some point we had a youthful House of Representatives, a Speaker of the House of Representatives in the name of Dimeji Bankole. Then we had a number of youths who have also headed, government offices, ministers, and so on and so forth. But that needed change wasn't visible, in terms of policy articulation, in terms of policy implementation, in terms of, even the energy, to drive the change that was needed. A number of them were found wanting, either engage in accumulation of wealth and so on and so forth. What will change? Will anything change, by just mere having a change in leadership in terms of the age bracket? Or do you see the Nigerian youths positioned properly, if gotten the opportunity to drive the needed change?
If we make comparison from Second Republic till ill-fated Third Republic of Babangida democratic experiment, we can vividly see that there were some changes, even though it was at the state levels, at the part of youth leadership. I will give you an example. During Shagari administration, how many of them were youths? Governor of Lagos, Jakande, cannot be described to be a youth at that time.
Even though
also, when you take his counterpart, Mohammed Goni in Borno State, cannot be said to be youth. Is it the governor of Niger State, then Awal Ibrahim, that was youthful? Or was it Adamu Atta? Or was it that of Oyo State, then Bola Ige? Was it that of Ondo State, Michael Ajasin then? Or was it that of Gongola and host of others?
Yeah. So you can see that there is a trajectory.
So when you now see in the ill-fated Babangida Third Republic, we had youthful governors who started to make waves before Abacha came and overthrew the administration. You had Sahad Bin Nkodu in Jigawa State then. You can vividly. We have Musa Inua of blessed memory in Niger State then. Then also you also had in Kwara State, you had Kabir Gaya in Kano State, Saidu Barda in Katsina State. Then you had Moses Adazui, even though he was not that young and what have you. Then you had other younger ones that started making waves before they were overthrown by the military administration. Then again, coming from 1999, Ahmed Bola Tinubu was governor of Lagos State. At least he reshaped Lagos to some extent. Then when you leave Lagos State then and you go to some other state that had people that were
the likes of McCarthy and the rest of
even Donald Duke also.
That's right.
Ahmed McCarthy, Kaduna State, Donald Duke of Cross River State, they made waves. Look at how he brought Obudu Ranch and also of others. So the issues also are, I think, with the nascent democratic experiment, we have to give them that excuse. Sometimes I believe.
Are we still nascent when we have
we are just
democracy running?
How old is American democracy? 200 and something years. Nigerian democracy from 1999 till date is out. We are not up to 30 years. So I see a child that is still 20-something years. To me, you as a father and mother, you still need to be, grooming them with certain leadership styles. So I believe as the time goes on, we get there one day.
Do we get, because it's not something that will just happen overnight. Certainly it has to go with planning, it has to go with, influencing, or rather grooming, if you like, the youths we are talking about. But today, as you rightly mentioned earlier, youths are being relegated to the background. they are giving, menial jobs, if I should put them that way, in politics. Even in politics, they are just meant to be, either political thugs, giving monies to go on social media and promote their sponsors and so on and so forth. Don't you think there should be a deliberate effort, a design, to bring together the youths, groom them, and then get them to have a path that would lead to this change in leadership that we're talking about and the demography?
Well, with how the Nigerian polity is and system, it is very difficult because we also have this politics of godfatherism, which has to do with interests, because most of the money backs that sponsored some of these politicians, sometimes they also look at what they will get if I invest in this person. What do I get in turn? So that is why grooming some of them will be that difficult, because everybody has his or her own interest. The only way we are going to fight this out is by making the political parties to be devoid of imposition of high tariff for nomination forms, just like you mentioned earlier. How on earth will you say in major parties that you are paying some amount of millions to get presidential form, nomination form, governorship? That itself is corruption. That itself is discouraging. So this itself has a kind of devastating effect on the mentality and thinking faculty of the youths. You now see, okay, since it is so, why can't I go under one godfather and do whatever I would do? That is why you see some of the youths are involved in money laundering. They launder money for some of the elites through building of estates, taking money abroad, building of this and that. So it is when the political parties, thank God we have IPAC, Interparty Advisory Committee. They also have whatever. Let them come to round table. Whether you are a major party like PDP, APC, SDP, NNPP, or what have you, that there should be uniformity in nomination form, even though it is a decision of party machinery or party administration. But there can be collective decision, because we are talking about...
How can anyone influence perhaps the choice of how much money?
This is where the National Assembly comes in. Because in the upper and lower chamber, you have standing committees. There are committees on INEC. There are committees and what have you. So those committees that supervises the INEC and to extension political parties should make it mandatory. They should legislate it in the law that certain nomination forms should not exceed this and that. That can be affordable by all and sundry. But in a situation where you are calling nomination form 100 million, it means the bout du jour whom you are calling the corrupt leader is still the same person that will come. And that is why people go extra miles to amaze wealth in order to contest. You don't blame them sometimes. If I know I am going to pay 100 million in APC or PDP, for example, to get presidential nomination form, and one governor that stole money say I should come and front and be a money launderer for him, I will go and do. So no matter what the EFCC does, ICPC or NFIU or Police Special Fraud Unit, it might amount to wasting of time. So I think the chunk of the responsibility of redressing this lies on the National Assembly, because it has to do with legislation. Once the enabling laws are there, it is legislated, the political parties will have no choice than to adhere to. And if anyone goes contrary to the legislative provision, then such kind of party should be sanctioned, and if possible sent into extinction.
Right, okay, talking about legislations to pave way or to create an enabling environment. We've had some in the past. We'll talk about them when we return. And then also look at, perhaps whether there could be a kind of resolve, a kind of agreement, if you like, among the elites themselves, to come to terms with the reality that we needed to move this country forward, and we have to create an atmosphere that will bring in and encourage youth's participation in politics. And we'll look at that when we return. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics, and we're looking at youths and the task of taking back the country. We are looking at this in in comparison, if you like, with what happened in Senegal recently, where a 44-year-old emerged president from grass, some will say, to grace. We'll look at that when we return. Stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. Do well by also following our conversation across our social media platforms. You can also watch us live on YouTube. And back in the studio, we're looking at the task ahead of youths, in taking back the country. And I still have in the studio the comrade Salihu Mahmud. Just before the break, you were talking about strengthening legislations or coming up with legislations that will provide an enabling environment for youth participation in politics and governance. And you're talking about, tasking the National Assembly to make it a form of law now, or rather to have a cap or peg as to how much political parties should collect in terms of their nomination forms and so on. Looking back at 2023, how the exorbitant price of nomination forms alone scared away a number of potential youths who were aspiring to lead this country. Some of them I remember, by the mere announcement of the 100 naira peg for nomination forms. Some of them just, went to address press conferences announcing their withdrawals. That shows completely they got discouraged immediately. And even though some would say, okay, the National Assembly members you're talking about, a number of them are also beneficiaries of this arrangement. They've amassed wealth. A number of them have the wherewithal, the financial chest, the war chest, to be able to compete in these elections and so on. Perhaps may not allow their selfish interest to also do the right thing by reducing the amount, for nomination forms. And do you see that as a possibility?
For instance, when you are a beneficiary of an initiative and you are there, automatically you sustain that initiative. Like from 1999 till date, we've had increase in youth participation in governance, from State Assembly to House of Reps to Senate, and even as governors and what have you. Most of the impediments has been nomination fee. I want to tell you emphatically that were the nomination forms to be less, you will have seen more youth presence in area of contesting for positions in APC, PDP, and what have you. But their inability to pay the nomination fee discourages them and make them to go to smaller parties. And we have a mentality in our political system. People like to reckon with already made, where they want to ask, General so and so is in so Air Vice Marshal retired so or AIG so is in or former governor this and this and this. These heavyweights, where they are is where people like to reckon with. If not, we have smaller parties in existence, but because of lacking structure, people don't like to go there, and that is why you see the rush to go to where there is competition, there are heavyweights, creme de la creme, and also but the higher rate of nomination fee normally kill their zeal even before the intention and also other things. So except modalities are taken, just like our advice, it will still remain the same. For example, if I have interest to maybe contest for presidency, maybe in 2027, by mere mention of 200 million APC, PDP, I will not go there. And you don't expect me to go to a smaller party that don't even have structure in my local government, my first ward, and what have you. So these are the issues. So it is when there is that legislation, and that is why I say bulk of it lies on the two chambers of the National Assembly, because they all have standing committees. They can review the laws, hold public hearings, make submissions, then make it mandatory. Because if they make it mandatory, no political party will go against it.
Yeah, but beyond the nomination form, which is just a gateway, so to speak, to participation actively in politics, even the what is required, to be able to mobilize, to be able to reach out, is enormous. If you see what someone will spend, to become just a chairman, a local government chairman, or to become a member of state assembly and so on, it will baffle you to see, how millions of naira, if not billions, are required for people to be able to aspire to leadership positions. How do you think this can be addressed, in a society that is already, politics has already been monetized, so to speak, or, and then poverty has been weaponized. People expect you to spend X, Y, Z to be able to get somewhere.
When you take the Second Republic, for instance, how much did Shehu Shagari had before he became nominated or maybe won the presidency? There were bourgeois and some businessmen in the National Party of Nigeria, the NPN, that sponsored, and among them were the late MKO Abiola and also others. So we should go back to tradition of where party has role to play of certain percentage in candidates' emergence, in candidates' victory at the polls. Because parties like MPN, UPN did that. Because I can vividly remember in Kwara State in the Second Republic, there was a particular person that stood for elective office under UPN. It was through late Chief Obafemi Awolowo that the sponsorship came, including the L300. I remember, you can recall the L300 buses they used that time. Even the L300 bus and Volkswagen Beetle that UPN donated then were given by Awolowo. Same thing with MPN. The ones that contested for certain local positions were sponsored by the National Party of Nigeria and also other things.
Yeah, but so today the political parties are the ones breathing, on the neck of candidates.
Then what is the importance of the, you see, the essence of this fee they charge for nomination forms are for such purposes. Unfortunately, it is the other way around, where you see the party administrators embezzle it. We know of a court case at the part of a Labour Party chairman that he embezzled certain billions of money. Such monies are meant for victory of your candidates. For
mobilization,
State Assembly,
and so on.
The House of Reps, Senate, and governors, and even President, but it is the other way around now. So I think they should also restructure such laws that makes contributions gotten from sale of nomination form, even though we are calling for a reduction in their prices, no matter how little, should be used for sponsorship of candidates. Because when you are now saying a candidate should sponsor him or herself, then you are opening way for corrupt politicians to come. Because the way and manner such candidate gets the funds, you don't know. When they do fundraising in campaigns, you don't know whether the person coming to make the highest donation is a 419 money launderer and what have you. So I think we should come back
from diaspora.
We should come back to party sponsorship of candidate till victory. That is the essence of the monies they have in the party administration. Right.
Talking about party sponsorship, I don't know whether also aligning, if you like, or going under an umbrella of a particular party would drive this process. For instance, we've seen how Labour Party became handy for former Anambra State Governor Peter Obi, as a platform. And then we've seen how youths embrace that party, and we've also seen how the marginalized also align with its ideologies and so on. And then to a very large extent, we've seen that also translated into the election result. He eventually came third in that election. And, do you see a wisdom in youths in Nigeria, for instance, looking at their numerical strength, aligning with the political party or coming up with a political party that is youth-centric, that they can drive and put all their energy towards that, mobilization-wise, networking-wise and all of that, to be able to, make a mark in the politics?
Well, I cannot use Peter Obi's stride in 2020 election as example, because there were some ethnic and religious...
Yeah, I wouldn't want to talk about it. But then,
it is good we put it, because we want to make reference so that when we observe, it was even, I Atiku Abubakar, former vice president, the presidential candidate of PDP, that came second.
Yeah.
If you can recall.
Yes.
So the issue is the type of mobilization that was done in Labour Party. We cannot call it a central or generally accepted one, because when you take the northern part of the country, for instance, you will see that the block of votes Peter Obi got cannot be compared to that of the southeast, cannot be compared to that of the southwest, and also of others. So I think we should use another better.
Yeah, the point. I mean, the reason why I used that was perhaps to show that it is not just you know, a straitjacket to say that, you know, one has to just go or aspire under the platforms of PDP or APC, for instance, who are established political parties. What that means is that any political party can drive the necessary traffic to itself, you know, depending on the ideology, depending on the characters, you know, it is displaying and all of that. That's just what I mean. For instance, we have maybe a National Youth Party or something of that nature, and then the Nigerian youths, looking at their number, now decide to say, okay, we're going to align with this party. We're going to put our energy, channel our energy towards this party. We're going to mobilize across, you know, party line, across political divides, I mean, across ethnic and religious divides, to push, you know, or to drive towards this a change that we require. Isn't that possible?
It's very difficult in Nigeria.
Okay.
There are certain factors that militates against that, religious and ethnic factors. Don't forget it. When a Nigerian person, whether youth or elderly, wakes up, first is he or she starts with religion, then the second is ethnic. So it will take a long time to be able to do that. Even if the youths are going to be successful in future elections that will make them president and what have you, you still see that these factors will come into consideration. For example, if one youth is a Muslim, is coming under Party P, and another one is a Christian, is coming under Party X, majority of the Muslim youths will go for their own fellow Muslim, irrespective of what the conducts and the antecedents were. Same way with the Party X, where if the youth standing for election is Christian, the majority of the supporters will be the Christian. I'm not saying there are not going to be other religion and what have you. The same thing with tribe and what have you. So unless the National Orientation Agency and other religious bodies succeed through the Nigeria Inter-Religious Council, where we have interfaith submits, like you have Muslims there, you have Christians there, to say leadership has nothing to do with religion or tribe. You can even see from the elderly angle, when the Muslim ticket issue will come, a lot of the religious preachers that were Muslims went for who? Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu. For what reason? Because Asiwaju is a Muslim, Shetima is a Muslim. So let's take it from. So same way extends to the youthful angle, except if we continue reorientation, we continue voter education and what have you, to tell them that, come, somebody can be your fellow Muslim, lacking in attitude, lacking in patriotic leadership. Somebody can be your fellow Christian, lacking in attitude, lacking in patriotic leadership. If time shall tell if this can be. But the way Nigeria is now is porous, is volatile. We have a kind of mentality, it still succeed. Even the sermons in mosques, churches, preachings and what have you, you can sometimes see that our religious leaders too are not helping matters. It is very difficult for you to go to the church and you see a clergy preaching for a Muslim to be voted, or an imam preaching for a Christian to be voted. So it is going to be difficult, and the same syndrome that is in the elites is also in the youth, except if we continue mobilization, sensitization and reorientation. Outside that, it is going to be very, very difficult.
So it is difficult to outgrow this fault lines.
Absolutely.
But then we're talking about Senegal. Senegal also has a substantial number of Christians, for instance.
What is the percentage of Christian faith in Senegal?
Yeah, for instance, you know, if you look at, I mean, still we have denominations.
What religion is Sanko?
I can't remember.
Sanko should be Muslim.
Yeah, I think so.
Faye too?
Is also a Muslim. But then the outgoing president, I don't think
Nicky
it was a Muslim.
Sab. Yeah. I think it should be.
It was a Christian, isn't it? So if that happened, and what I'm trying to drive at is this: if other countries could outgrow these fault lines and be able to drive a process that will give them the kind of credible leadership they want, why is it difficult for this to happen in Nigeria? Even, looking at the realities on ground, today there is almost a consensus that the leadership elites, the ruling elites, have failed the country, have failed to deliver the goods. So why is it that Nigerians will not look at, these fault lines as a rallying point to say that, well, it is about time we jettison all of this, primordial sentiments and then drive a process that will give us the kind of leadership we want?
Don't forget, we have poverty, we have illiteracy, and they are artificially created for majority of the youths not to have direction. And chunk of people that possesses voters card, most of them are illiterate. If you observe, how many enlightened and educated youths do you see at polling units when it is time to vote president or what have you? It is even in 2023 that we can see majority of educated youths came out and what have you. It is zero. So the so-called taxi drivers, the agberos, the endakos, the meruas, the okada riders, the hairdressers, the what have you, when you observe, some don't even have secondary education. And they are still the ones that discharges their duties as patriotic citizens by getting their voters card and what have you. So illiteracy has been created, poverty has been created. Illiteracy was artificially created amongst the youth in order not to make them have sense of direction. So that when the elitist politicians come and said, come, Mashoud or Abdul Samad or Aminu is a Muslim, you must do this. If you do this to Ezekiel, a Christian, he will do this. They accept easily. In states, in other senatorial districts and in constituencies. Same way when they go to the, so in the faith of Christianity, if you do this for this and this, it won't, they've created it over time and they invest in creating this artificial poverty as well as illiteracy so that you won't be educated to know your direction and know your right. You won't have sense of belonging when you are poor. So this poverty you are seeing, they also created, and again, we have insecurity in some parts of the states. So except we fight poverty, we get our people educated. By getting them educated, then it is from there they will be able to know their right from wrong, left from right, and others. If this poverty and illiteracy exists, it will be very, very difficult. I will even give you an example. In Nigerian polity, every day when everybody wakes up, how many people criticizes the local government chairman? How many people criticizes the governor or senator or House of Reps? Everything goes back to the president. Forgetting that state governors get allocation, they even borrow money from clubs, foreign borrowing clubs and what have you. House of Rep member, he gets his quarterly payment, he gets certain what have you. The same thing with senator, but when anything goes wrong, the direction of blame goes to who? President and commander-in-chief. What is responsible for that is poverty and also illiteracy.
Right. Okay, lastly, of course time has been spent. If you're, in 60 seconds, if you can, suggest 3 years in politics is a big time. Let's say we have between now and 2027. What would you advise the Nigerian youth demography to do in terms of channeling or galvanizing or redirecting their conscience and thinking and energy, to drive a change, a process that will bring about the desired change?
Nigerian youths from now, they need to get together, hold joint summits on issues that affect the nation, from issues of insecurity to issue of electoral matters, where they will discuss issue of non-consideration of religious or ethnic affiliation when it comes to election or representation or support. They belong to, for example, National Youth Council of Nigeria. You have Christians, you have Muslims. They all do things together there. Other civil society organizations. If this happens and nobody considers religion or tribe, how come in the polity we cannot do that? So I think if these summits, interactions continue from south-south, southeast, southwest, north-central, northwest, northeast, I think before another time of voting, we'll be able to do certain things that ought to be done, how, when, and where.
Thank you very much, Comrade Salihu Mahmud, a public affairs analyst. Together we'll be looking at the task of taking back the country, especially looking at the youth's demography and how they can drive a process that will bring about the desired leadership in the country. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Shafiu, and entire Trust audience.
Right, and viewers, this is a wrap on today's edition of Daily Politics. Don't forget to join us, as we do this on daily basis from Monday to Thursday and on Friday, where we open our lines for you to comment on national issues. Before then, and on behalf of the technical crew, my name is Shafiu Suleiman, thanking you for investing your time with us.